on no sound. So we're just going to double check that. I'll keep talking for the moment. Okay, so I'm going to rewind. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Spiritual Psychics TV and this Being Spiritual. I'm your host, Ashley Robinson, and it's fantastic to be connecting with you this evening. I was just starting to reach out to a few of you and say hello, and we're going out live across YouTube and Facebook with Spiritual Psychics TV, 8 o'clock in the UK Greenwich Mean Time. I know some of you are watching live and some of you watch on playback. For those of you watching live, like my dad's just done there, hello Dad, good evening to you and Richard, have a good show. Engage with us, engage. Tell us where you're watching the show from. Native Dreamcatcher, good evening to you, and we'll do a little name check and we'll say hello to you. It's an interactive show, folks. Hi, Nina Lee. Nina Lee's asking for a reading. And Nina, if you come up with a good question later, then I'll absolutely do a quick mini reading for you. It's a spiritualist philosophy show. We're going to be talking a little bit about the spirit world and heaven. Hi, Jill. Good evening to you. And thanks to those of you that said that you weren't getting any sound. We'll be talking a little bit about life in the spirit world, life in heaven, reception in particular. Sam B, good evening to you. But you can ask Ash anything. So get all of your spiritual and spiritualist questions queued up. Richard will try and choose some of those ones that have the most amount of lights and interactions, and then that person will get a little mini reading. It might be a psychic reading. It might be me drawing a card. It might be a spiritualist message where I give you evidence of life after life with a communicator. Kaylee Watts, good evening to you. So if you are watching live, also please continue to build this community and build this stream. So give it a good share for me now. Joanne Ripper says good evening to you, watching from Facebook. On Facebook, make sure, like Joanne's doing, you're participating with the live chat and you can engage with us there. If you're on YouTube, make sure you click on the little forward arrow, share this out across your socials, WhatsApp groups and other bits and pieces. Let people know you're watching a spiritual philosophy show, Being Spiritual. Elizabeth Kane, good evening to you. Really, really easy to do. So on YouTube, you click on the little share arrow, you can copy the link. You can then go into Facebook, Instagram. Hi, Sam B from Australia, and you can share the link. So I'm going to do that exactly now. I'm going to try and multitask. I've copied the link from YouTube. I can paste that out on my socials and my WhatsApp groups. I can go into Facebook and just share this on my wall. You can even tag people, folks. You can tag someone. Tag my mum. Say, "Mum, I'm on the telly." Or if you're watching the show, tag someone that's interested in spiritual chat. Spiritualism, very much for me, a religion and way of life. Being spiritual is our opportunity to all stand together under that umbrella, where faith and belief is very much a private thing, and then we'll have the opportunity to talk about what we're sort of doing, how we're sort of doing it, and in doing that, we explore the art of the possible. Now, Kaylee Watt says, "Hi, Ash. We lost my other nan yesterday. When do they tend to come through once they've passed over?" So good first question, actually, Kaylee, and I will answer that. I'll get straight into that now because it segues quite nicely into the conversation that we're going to have about the spirit world. And then I'll do probably a card reading for you, Kaylee. So the honest answer is they can communicate immediately. Our personality continues unchanged into that life and existence that lots of us refer to as heaven, that life after that change that our body's just gone through that we call death. Now, there is a handful of sort of what I almost refer to as like raffle style properties, because if someone has an absolute belief in a life after their life, the life after death, and they know they can communicate and they know that people can receive communication, in theory, it makes it very easy for them to immediately do it. Now, I've had examples of people that wasn't really sure what there was going to be after that change called death, and they were still able to communicate immediately. I know other people that absolutely believed in it, were mediums, and have never communicated since they've passed over. Now, I'm led to believe from my advisors and my inspirers that it's very much a personal choice. So when you find yourself in that place you call heaven, the spirit world, is everything you need it to be. And if you need to get word back to friends and family to let them know you're okay, then there is the opportunity to do that, either directly or through someone else. If you need some help, psychological help, physical help to get over the trauma of what's going on, then that's what you get too. Perhaps it's too busy meeting with loved ones and people that have been waiting for you there. So lovely, good question there, Kaylee, to get us into this. I'm going to draw a card for you, and this card is Voyage. Okay, so this card often, when drawn, talks about an intimate trip across water, perhaps a holiday or vacation. But I talk about, as I draw this card, I get inspired, Kelly, to talk about you. And the voyage is very much about exploring you and the authentic you. And you being able to take all of you on this voyage, because you haven't been getting out of bed with all of you. Now, that sounds like a strange thing to say, Kaylee, but I believe you will understand why it is that I'm being told that. My guide, Bob, who's inspired me to draw this card, is saying that you will understand that. You'll also understand the significance of planning for a trip. He talks to me that you've been planning, and I think even booking, because I've got you, he said clicking. I mean, clicking, maybe you were doing something online then to sort of book a trip. But there's something there about you traveling. Okay, that's quite important. But you're going to take all of you, and there's an opportunity to explore new aspects of you and get to know you, Kaylee. So very, very welcome. Thank you for asking the first question, and thank you for getting into that. If I haven't specifically mentioned your name, folks, apologies. But know that if you're participating live on the YouTube and Facebook chat, we should get your questions. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about Spirit World, and I just alluded to that, didn't I, with the first of the questions. But I've got a book here written by a wonderful man called Harry Edwards. Harry Edwards was an amazing teacher, philosopher, healer. He founded the Harry Edwards Spiritual Healing Sanctuary, and he's got a book called Life in Spirit. And I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs from that. And then Karen Rager, you've asked a question there about meditation, so I'm going to answer that question next. Now, just some context. So I'm jumping straight into the middle of book. For those that have watched the show before, you'll know that we've spoke about people that make decisions to take their own life and die by suicide. And I've mentioned my wonderful godson, Robert, who at 21 made that decision to take his life last year. And I've had to dig really deep amongst my own faith and belief to sort of ask about why he would do that. Was he always born with that sort of predestiny? Were there things that happened? And as part of understanding that, also wanting that reassurance that he got all of the help he needed. And I'm going to talk a little bit about reception into the spirit world. We just spoke about that question for Kaylee, didn't we? About heaven being everything they need it to be. And I'm going to go straight into a sort of paragraph, and it's talking about suicide. So there's just a trigger warning there that we're going to talk about suicide. More tragic could be those who are driven to suicide. They would not be damned to all eternity, as some religions would have us believe. They would be treated with special loving care. Knowing how mentally ill their tortured minds had suffered from troubles that were so real to them, so fearful that in panic they ended their earthly lives by their own hand. Just as a normal person possesses his character and memory at the passing, so it may be an unfortunate one, on coming into the new life, could still have the fears and reasons for the upset, possibly deep grief. A feeling mind will be able to create a picture of treatment the spirit doctors and nurses would give to them. The kind, soothing voice, the giving of love to wipe away the effects of cruelties and indignities, the giving of flowers, granting sleep, restoring the strength of personality and confidence, rebuilding their perspective, and providing them with a new avenue, possibly nursing or some other form of rendering help. There are, of course, many more types of special needs. For example, those who are insane, or taking into account the different forms of insanity, obsession, remorse, religious fervor, alcoholics, drug dependents, drug victims, the essentially hard materialistic mind, the miser, the hypochondriac, down to a person whose character could even be considered as evil, sadist, destroyer, merciless. In spirit life, all have the right of free will to go which way they wish, and no doubt those with evil minds will not be content to remain where love and goodness reigns. So they will go their own way. There are, however, other factors which have a direct bearing on how entities and entries are made in the spirit realm. If we believe that life in the spirit realm is orderly, then there must be rules controlling it and those who form the rules. It is worthwhile to try and form a mental picture of the scale of service and organization that must be applied for the one service of helping newcomers from the human family into spirit life. Perhaps we should avoid the tendency to compare spirit's potential to human limitations. The number of humans who are passing into spirit every minute must be very large, and assuming that all are met on arrival and that none are left alone to wander in fear or wonderment, the number of attendants devoted to this purpose must be many, many more. Assuming that one attendant can only deal with one entrant at a time, the number of attendants must be multiplied by the number of entrants and the time taken to cope with each one. Added to that will be the numbers of doctors and nurses who need to deal with special cases, some of which I've outlined, and in the facilities for resting and treating the patients and the rehabilitation as they are shown the way towards the spirit normality of life. In this, we can glimpse how those who we wish to give service to others have the opportunity of doing so. It is probable that there are many other avenues of service to God, to spirit, that is not easy for a physically limited mind to perceive. There are legions of those who render healing guidance and service for the earthly sick in mind, needing good influencing to bring contentment to the outlook. There are spirit doctors and the numbers behind the scenes who are attending the temples of healing to equip them with knowledge, to enable them to become a spirit doctor, and so on. The number of people choosing to serve God and man must be very large indeed. Behind all these good souls, there must be direction from a still higher or more knowledgeable source. But of this, possibly, we can offer some thoughts a little later on. Based on the premise that on entry into the spirit life, one is mentally, emotionally, and morally the same as he previously was, gives rise to conjecture of probable difficulties facing those who meet and administer the laws governing spirit's life. Where there exists enmity and hatred by one section of the community to another, it implies that when a militant Roman Catholic and equally militant Protestant arrive in spirit, they will for some time to continue to express hospitality to one another. As the numbers of contesting arrivals enter into spirit, it is logical that they will band together. Although it should be recalled that they have entered into a non-physical dimension, they're not able to harm each other in a physical sense. It may well be that they could be directed into different areas, and there of course is limitations to these, so that when they're occupied with other matters, the prejudice of the past will fade away. It is feasible to believe that there remain divisions of opinions, especially religious ones, without hatred and being tolerant of each other. It is natural that they will wish to continue to practice their respective religions. This aspect will be dealt with more later. There are other divisions which may be important in the early stages of spirit life. These are traditional unities and loyalties between people of their own race, so it could not be wondered if they are sought communal living in spirit life. It can be reasonably assumed that as spirit life proceeds and the potentials of higher development in the arts, wisdom, and the appreciation of life freed from physical limitations, many of the old world philosophies, love of power and possessions, relics of a form of life based on a materialistic code of values will progressively diminish. Religious prejudice will go, national patriotism will change into a wholesome love of all life, and of course, racial restrictions will disappear. True, it may take time longer to induce changes where the differences are the strongest between black, white, yellow, but spiritual values will replace the older ones. White people prefer a white doctor, for example, in a certain situation or culture, although in recent times, black doctors and nurses were becoming accepted in a general way. You only have to go back in a certain period of time. And if you think about South Africa, 1982, the year I was born, it was still illegal for people that were gay to get married. It was still illegal for people from different, a black and a white person to get married. That was only 41 years ago. And obviously I'm digressing slightly from the book there, remembering this was written in the 70s. But going back to the final few sentences, in South Africa there are white and black spiritual healers, and it's been found that a black sick person will inadvertently prefer a black healer to a white healer, even though the white healer has more experience and knowledge of the spiritual science. It is therefore natural that when a black person, for example, passes into spirit, he would strongly prefer to find himself amongst others and other people that look like them. If he is met by his dear ones, then he will be as much as home as John found himself to be. Now, I changed a few of the words slightly there, because written in the 60s and 70s, what was considered acceptable words are no longer acceptable here. And I mean, I'll mention them just for context, but he's talking here about coloured people and Negro, which are words that I know from my own experience people could find offensive now. So I tried to quote this almost directly, but this is written by a middle-aged white guy in the 70s, a fantastic sort of healer, but of course a lot of the writing was dictated by the people and the publishers of that day. Still, the important things there that I want to high back on about that perception and reception into the spirit world. And I want to just finish with a couple of personal reflections, and then I'll take questions afterwards, but I'm going to take Karen's question around meditation. So we think about that. For those of you that have watched the show before will know that I run a spiritual lyceum 3 or 4 times a year out of Women of Spiritualist Church in South London. We get my own children involved and other people's children involved. And when we were talking about bad or evil people that enter the spirit world, my sons Ethan and Noah spoke about their understanding in plain English. So, I've worked for the British government in civil service and in law enforcement, and my son spoke about the concept of some sort of border guard or border force in heaven, where the angels and the ascended sort of mistresses and masters of the spirit world would actually, protect everyone that's up there. And although we know we can't physically hurt people, my sons Ethan and Noah spoke about the fact that bad and evil people would probably find themselves in some sort of prison or cell or jail of their own making. And the angels are the border guards and police officers that sort of protect it. Now, although the cells were never locked because people have put themselves in there, it goes back to this thing of that, there's an opportunity for rehabilitation. And before they're sort of generally associating with other people. And I think to a certain extent, it talks about racial hatred in the book. It talks about, faith and sort of the sort of, I suppose, concept of hatred, Catholic and Protestant. I've got a wife that's half Irish. About conflict in Northern Ireland between sort of Catholic and Protestant. We've spoke about one of my friends whose family were Jehovah Witness, and he'd made that joke to me before that in heaven there was a massive wall for the kingdom of Jehovah Witnesses, and you had to be really quiet when you're in heaven because Jehovah Witnesses think that they're the only ones up there. And actually, if heaven's everything they need it to be, then initially they might think that they are the only people up there because their faith, their belief system took them to exactly that point. And what he was talking there about the healing was about conception, is about sort of evidence from the spirit world where people have spoke about the fact that, because our personality continues unchanged, our love, our likes, our interest, as well as our prejudice, both conscious and unconscious, go with us. And therefore, you don't suddenly become a much more tolerant or inclusive person. If you were very inclusive and you valued sort of, diverse society and you treated people based on the way they treated you and for what they were, then perhaps that's slightly different. But both my grandfathers grew up in an era where sort of certain words and phrases were acceptable, and they carried a lot of that right through into their sort of late 60s and 70s, and couldn't understand why it'd be offensive to use a word like that. They used to say to me, actually, you can't say that someone's black. That's offensive. I remember my nan having that conversation. And they'd grown up in 1960s and 70s in Brixton, very sort of diverse part of London. We've been talking quite a bit in the UK about the Windrush generation and thousands of people from the Caribbean and the Commonwealth countries that came to the United Kingdom at that time to sort of help with work. And my granddad talks about the really that both Irish people had and people of colour renting and getting jobs, being paid differently, not being acceptable in sort of rent. And again, not that long ago when we think about the 60s and 70s in terms of a time. So as people enter the spirit world, which is a place of pure love, of unconditional love, of course, there's an element of education and investment that goes back into but we are products of our culture and our upbringing and our values and the life we live now I think what we're getting as that headline is that our personality is unchanged. When it first enters the spirit world, we have the ability and the capacity to communicate immediately, and that heaven is everything we need it to. In particular, I think it was funny, well, not funny, and there's no such thing as a coincidence, folks, that when I was looking for my book, couldn't find the book I originally wanted. I found this book and I opened it up on that page where my godson Robert had been influencing me today. Now, I'm not going to break too many confidentialities, but there was a particularly type of funny cigarette my godson used to enjoy, and he's able to physically reproduce the smell of that potent herb in the physical 3D world. So I know that even though he has no physical body, he's able to recreate those experiences because of the way it made him feel. I also know he's got all of the psychological help he needed, and he's finally at peace and at rest and out of pain. And those things were quite reassuring for me, even though I believed them before that he had died. For him to come back and give me evidence is hugely reassuring. So, little bit of an insight in there to the Harry Edwards book there, say life in spirit, all sorts of different contexts Harry Edwards Henry gives us there throughout his book. But I wanted to talk to you about heaven today, and you can ask me absolutely any questions about spirit world or heaven. And for those new to the show, know that as well as me giving you what I believe to be the truth based on my humble opinion, I am influenced by my spirit committee. I call them EXCO, the executive committee. They are the make all the decisions. They do it as a democratic collective. They are chaired, I believe, by a good friend of mine that I knew in this 3D existence, Ralph A. Steadman, who is a philosopher and a great teacher. And he chairs my current committee, involves a few of my guides. I mentioned Bob Brunton, who was my godfather while I was alive, sits on that committee, was a painter and decorator, was a healer, was a medium, was a carpenter, was a boxer. There is a chap called Bear, or Running Bear, Native American Indian, so what would be considered Virginia now, from 1700s USA. I've got an ancient Mongolian Sai that sits on that committee, an American philosopher who grew up in and around the Harvard area in America, passed in the 1960s and 70s. There's some of the characters on that committee. I'm still getting to know others, and what they do is they've all passed into the spirit world over the last 4,000 to 5,000 years with different opinions of the 3D experience that they had and what life and the universe is all about. And collectively, they bring those opinions here, and then Ralph kind of helps them get to a point of saying, right, this is what we now believe to be the truth. Some have incarnated before that last return to the spirit world. As they are now, I believe that their last incarnation, I say, was between 50 to 4,000 years ago. So lots of different types of experience. Some of them had, previous to that, had incarnated, they tell me, a few times, some even tens of thousands of times, over the last sort of 10 to 11,000 years, certainly since the Ice Age. So lots of different types of experiences that they've had, and each time learned different things in that 3D experience. So yeah, get me Karen's question, which I'm going to take now, and then we'll take some more questions for you. But what do you think, folks, on reflections from what I've just said? So Karen said, besides meditation, what else can one do to tap into spiritual gifts? Mediation, Karen, I think is very much quite literally a state of mind, isn't it? It's about practicing that attunement. So practice. I struggle. And I've been brought up in spiritualism, so 41 years as a spiritualist, sitting in formal development circles since I was 18. I still struggle to meditate. I do try and meditate every single day. I certainly try and open up and meditate before I work spiritually on shows like this and doing my mediumship or my healing. So above and beyond that, it's about practice. So, we all have access to the spiritual gifts. Keep practicing with those spiritual gifts. If you're an artist, you have natural ability, but the more you practice, the more you get better. If you really want to get better at art, you go to art school. You go and you employ instructors and tutors and coaches and mentors to get you better. So, work with circle leaders, developers, continue to develop your natural abilities and get really, really good at it, and practice. And it's all about learning to attune. Switching those dials, fiddling with those knobs, and getting to that point that you are well attuned between this world and the next world to access those spiritual gifts. Karen, I'm going to draw a card for you. The card I've drawn you is the card of fortune. There you are on the winding staircase and look at the direction. Okay, onwards, rising, forwards. There you are with the lantern of light and knowledge, like the sunflower. Karen, turn and face that light, but you are now creating your own light. You are the architect of the next chapter of this journey. And this journey is hard. You can't see the future end state. You can't see the top of the staircase, but you must know that staircases, particularly round circular staircases, were made were deliberately made quite difficult for people to get up, because if you were defending your castle or your house or your mansion, you had the higher ground and you would defend that. They were quite narrow, they were not very well lit, and it made it very difficult to see round the corner unless you were coming down the stairs. But you're on your way up, Karen. So have some faith to know that you are proceeding onwards, upwards, and rising. Know that you only need to see what's in front of you. It's one day at a time, one step at a time. I think you'd understand that importance of just slowing down, focus on that step in front of you, and know that your wealth, your fortune awaits you at the top of the staircase. And on the way there, continue to experience all of the things around you. I don't think this is a physical fortune, Karen, but there's seeking knowledge, that you are seeking knowledge, and just continue onwards, upwards, rising, forwards up this staircase, and it's going to become vulnerable because it's dark and you can't really see what's just in front of you. But have some faith. Keep on keeping on, Karen, and hopefully that makes sense to you. And we're going to continue to take some more questions. So what did you think, folks? What do you think so far? If you're new to the show, you're getting a bit of spiritualist philosophy, getting some of my my pearls of wisdom. Not really my pearls of wisdom, but from the executive committee. Stephen says, if there is heaven, does that mean there is a hell? If the devil punishes bad people in hell, does that make him a good guy? Oh, lots of good questions within that, Stephen. And it goes back to what my son was sort of saying, because although I'm bringing them up spiritual and spiritualist, I mentioned my wife is Irish, so they've been brought up Catholic. One's a spiritualist Catholic, one's an Irish Catholic spiritualist, and one's a Catholic spiritualist. Free boys, but the two of them of school age are going to a Catholic school, so it talks a lot about heaven and hell and good and bad and the devil and Jesus, and it's almost like that yin yang. What I'm trying to teach my boys is all of the different shades of grey between the black and the white. Now, I believe in God, in the sense that I believe in something greater than myself. But I believe that God is a word used to describe the sum total of all of the particles of energy and atoms in this universe, which is continually expanding. God is therefore more of like an umbrella than a supreme being. But within that God umbrella, I do see supreme beings, I see ascended masters, and I see reflections of great people. I believe that Jesus was indeed an incarnation on earth, and although I think he may have been misquoted, I also think he was trying to help us understand the concept of energy. And when he was talking about being the Son of God, he was talking about us all being children of God potentially, and that he was trying to contextualize a fatherly like relationship between energy in the universe, and we're all part of something bigger. So talk about devil perhaps as a fallen angel in some of these sort of Christian teachings, but most major religions talk about something lower. Okay, we often think about heaven as higher and hell as lower, below us. Now, if we take this to energy, we take this to frequency, imagining that we're sort of vibrating about this sort of level, and that's our earthly 3D experience. I believe that when our body goes through that change we call death, we ascend. And we enter, if that was the 3D dimension in this physical world, we enter the next level, the fourth dimension, a transition, a corridor, a limbo between this and what I would describe as the fifth dimension as heaven. Now, hell, I think, as in terms of an existence, could be perhaps a lower frequency. While we think about heaven as higher and hell as lower, is perhaps below the third dimension as a second dimension, perhaps a first, perhaps even below that, the elements, fire, earth, and water, oxygen, air, all of those sort of elements. Perhaps that hell is about people that slip. So if you enter the afterlife, because I believe there is only one life after this life, one afterlife, and I do use that word heaven, actually you would find yourself, it's not compatible. You can't progress. Only positivity, only love, only light can progress. Anything negative is not going to be able to continue to progress beyond the fourth dimension, fifth dimension, sixth dimension, and so on and so on and so on. And I think when we talk about higher beings and levels of knowledge, it's about them continuing to ascend and work their way through those dimensions. Evil people are unable to proceed. They've got so much negativity, so much negative karma, perhaps things they've done and decisions, and therefore they find themselves operating in that. Now, I don't think there is sort of one person in charge called the devil that punishes, but I do think that for the guardians, the guides, if you like, there's an element of that protection. I love that plain English description that my boys use, you know. Oh, they're like the border guards, Dad. You know, they're the police. The angels are sort of the police. So I think there's a fact of, because you can't physically hurt each other, if your personality continues unchanged, you could end up saying something quite offensive and upsetting someone. And there's an element of you being unable to progress, and therefore perhaps the punishment for your decisions, because there's always a consequence for every decision we make, Stephen, is that you're unable to sort of progress. Now, you might be able to sort yourself out in the afterlife, and you might be able to then continue to progress. My friend Ralph Steadman, who I mentioned, used to talk about the fact that you might get to a point that there's only so much negativity you can work off in the spirit world, and you end up deciding to reincarnate and choose a more difficult pathway, a more challenging circumstances, so you can work off some of that karma debt in order to continue to progress when you then come back up through the third and fourth dimension again. And I think about people leaving, you know, that spirit world down. So yeah, good question. I don't think I've directly answered whether or not the devil, but I'm sort of saying I don't think the devil exists. So I'm going to draw a card for you, Stephen. And I should say, folks, if you don't want me to read, thank you for the feedback, Stephen. If you don't want me to read for you, please make that clear in the question that you don't want me to draw a card. Okay, the message. So, Stephen, the card I've drawn for you here, the message in the bottle. Okay, and look at that. Catch of the day. Fisherman has just picked up the fish, and inside is a bottle, and inside the bottle is a message. The message is in a language that you don't understand, Stephen. What I want to talk about, the fact is that you are receiving information and intelligence through all of your traditional sources, your eyes, your ears, your feelings, the smell, and you're receiving information and intelligence from people that talk to you, and from things that you read and things that you acquire. But in doing this, and in terms of you deciding sort of what to do next and coming up with your plan, you're having to decipher the information you've got that's readily available to you. Now, in my professional life, we used to talk about use of force continuum, which evolved into a decision-making model. There was a conflict resolution model, and again, it evolved into decision-making model, national decision-making model. And they talk about this cycle, and I'm seeing that cycle in my head as we're working through this. And it's like, right, I've got access to the information and intelligence, but the message you're receiving in the bottle, it's now for you to decipher it and for you to look into all the other meanings. And I think there is some information which is coming your way, things you have heard, things you have witnessed, things you've experienced, and you're looking at it from a different way. And I want to ask you to continue to explore the art of possible, decipher that message, and get to the true meaning of that, Stephen. I hope that makes good sense. Thank you. Yeah, look after laughter. Thank you, Stephen. I really appreciate you giving me that information. Okay. So next questions. Let's get your questions coming in, folks. I realised I was halfway through sharing the stream, and I've managed to do that now. Okay, right. Nina Lee says, "Do spirits come to people who need them, or are there all the time? I've been waiting for a message from loved ones and never received anything. I'm missing them desperately." I think that if we think about our earthly experience, Nina, as the third dimension, then when people enter the spirit world, their personality is changing. So you can't truly destroy energy. You can change energy. So our body goes through that change we call death and changes, cremated, buried, etc. But the vessel, the container for that personality is no longer there. So the personality goes upwards, I think, onwards into the fourth or fifth dimension. So they're not actually sort of with us all of the time waiting to communicate. And I think that some of the misconceptions from sort of Christian religion, they say, oh, it's unfair, you shouldn't disturb the dead. It's like, well, you're not, because they're quite happy in the afterlife. They're the ones that make a decision to communicate, and they sometimes come to you directly. It's very hard for them to influence anything in this 3D world, but they certainly give it a go. Smells, touches, whispers into little robins that fly in front of you and sort of get your attention. But there are those sort of opportunities. Perhaps they'll go and find a medium, or they're waiting for you to find a medium or someone else that's received this information, or the gaps between electronic voice phenomenon and the white noise. Sometimes they're not ready to communicate. Sometimes their personality or their culture prevents them from doing so because they don't think it's right to do. And there are therefore lots and lots of contributing factors. It's very hard, I find, to have communication with my loved ones. Some of that is sort of like the limitation of our own ego, our own personality. So my godfather, Bob Brunson, my guide, I knew him very well. My godson Robert knew him very well. And although I see and feel the presence of Bob as my guide in a working capacity, I very rarely get sort of a message from him. It's very much like a professional relationship, like an interface. And when I ask him about how he is, or his partner Lou, I get those feelings and those sensations. And my ego, if you like, the ego of Ashley Robinson is like, oh, but they would tell you that they're okay and they're loved, and therefore you start doubting yourself. And I think, therefore, it's much harder to read for yourself, in the same way it's quite hard to read for your loved ones. A lot of this boils down to ego and trust, because the less I rely on me, Ashley Robinson, the more I just surrender myself to the will of spirit, and I stop trying to understand what they're telling me and I just say it, it comes out far more direct. And, my godson, Robert, I often find in a dream state, it's easier for him to, and he just talked to his mum. Well, maybe she's just unable to hear him. Maybe he finds it difficult, in the same way when he was alive, difficult to speak to his mum. But actually, sometimes when I'm reading for absolute strangers, I get more evidence for them than I do from people I know. And that is always great evidence of life after death. But Nina, that hopefully answers your question. What I'm going to try and do is give you a spiritualist message, and I'm going to try and bring forward a communicator, someone that you would understand. Don't feed me any information. Always good advice for all of you folks. Never feed a medium. Most of us are very well fed at home anyway, but don't feed us information and intelligence. Let us give you evidence of someone's personality, and once you understand who the personality is, you can sort of receive a message. So Nina, there is a man that's working with me. This man claims to know you. He claims to be family. He talks about being a brother. He talks about being a father. He talks about being a grandfather. He shows me your family tree. He talks about being on your mum's side of the family. I know that you are Nina Lee. He talks about Stan Lee. Now, I don't know if he's talking about the name Stan or he's linking it together. Stan Lee. I grew up in an area in Wallington, and I went to a school called Stanley Park, and he's showing me the Stanley Park School, but he's also highlighting your name. So I think you'd either understand the name Stan or Stan Lee. That's quite important. Stan was my great uncle on my nan's side, and I was getting that link of Stan there through. And I've got someone here with very thick hands, but strong hands, rough skin, as if they've been working with wood or metal and sort of tools that they would have used their hands. I think that, okay, thank you. 7-4. 7-4 is important. So I don't know if 74, I think it's linked to a date of birth. I don't know if they're showing me 7 and 4 as in like the month of July, and the 4th, maybe the 4th of July, or it's the 7th of the 4th or 7th of April. But I feel like it's an important date, or maybe even 1974. But you'd understand why he's giving me the significance of that. And he's talking about the fact that there is a woman with him. This woman, okay, thank you. Okay, all right, thank you. He's very fast talking now. This woman has a cancerous type condition in the spirit world. She's not communicating, he is, and he's just talking about a woman with a cancerous type condition, an infection, and the fact that he is with her as well. Symbolically, you'd understand. So Nina, Hopefully that all makes sense to you. I'm being told it will. Do give me verification. I don't think you've responded yet, but if you're able to give us sense, then I take that challenge, and I take that no as a challenge to get you better evidence. But I'm being told by my guides that should all make sense to you. Thank you for that question, Nina. We'll take the next question. Okay, quite a few questions coming in, so producers having a look through. Okay, got a good question. So, the lovely Terry Louise says, when we keep sending thoughts out to spirit for guidance, and do they come through? Why is it they don't actually provide guidance? Oh, is that a couple of questions within a question there, Terry? So, first thing is, let's have a look at the definition of guidance. Okay, so guidance versus opinion versus instruction. I believe we all have a guide. Every single one of us has a spirit being who dedicates their entire service from the spirit world to our earthly experience. They're with us from the point of conception right back to the point that we come home to that place that I call the spirit world. And their job, like Jiminy Cricket, like our consciousness, is to help us understand the difference between good and bad. And if you believe in the concept of destiny and the element of us heading in a predetermined direction, they're trying to steer us. They're trying to keep us there. And every time we feel that intuition, instinct, that elastic pull to stay on the straight and narrow path, that elastic pull, then that is them trying to provide guidance. But we are gifted with free will. We can do whatever we want, whenever we want. We don't even have to follow the elements of predestined guidance. Lots of physical conditions in our earthly experience can change that as well. But as we go forward, you could argue, why aren't they providing me guidance? What if they were and we just weren't listening? What if we were listening but not understanding? You know, for those of you that drive, you're driving down the road, you see a signpost to where you were going and you drive straight past it. The guidance was there, but you weren't focused or you weren't paying attention. You were doing something else and you missed it. Speed limits are a legal limitation, but they're also there as a guidance for the road conditions, our stopping distances and things like that. Sometimes we make a decision not to do that. There are other times, if you live anywhere in a city like London, you can't get anywhere near the speed limits because of the congestion. So the guidance is there, and you think, well, they're guiding me to go no more than that speed when I'm doing, you know, a quarter of that. So there's all sorts of different things of understanding that. The fact is that if we are asking for guidance, at the very least, we'll get opinions. Right? So all of our communicators, all of our guides can give us their opinions on what's going on right now in our life. And their opinions are their opinions. You know, if I ask for my nan for some advice about money and spending and finance, she can give me her opinion on that. She can't give me any guidance on it because she wasn't a financial advisor. She might give me her opinion on what she thinks I should do with the money or not do with the money, or I should probably try and stop spending the money I don't have on credit and things like that. But the element of guidance, if I want financial advice, I need a financial advisor in the earthly life or the sort of spirit life. So if we are sort of specifically saying, right, I'm at a junction, I want to go left, I want to go right, give me the guidance, and you don't think you're getting it back, perhaps we're asking the wrong question, or perhaps the experience is for us to make the decision and then be comfortable with it, because it's our body and our vessel and our experience. Now, Terry, you've gone on to say that you're referring to when they come through via a medium, and nothing is mentioned on the specific subject we may be asking guidance on. It may be that if you're talking about a medium now, that your communicator simply doesn't feel sufficient to sort of give guidance on this, or that the guidance could be misunderstood. Now, I'm going to quote a friend of mine, Mr. Ivan Lee, recently ordained as a minister with me at Women's Spiritualist Church. And Ivan Lee said, would you just imagine as a medium, someone walks in and says, I've only got one question, yes or no? And the communicator comes through and say, yeah, they should absolutely do it. And you say, yeah, absolutely, you should do it. They go away and say, thank you very much. And as they walk out the church, they were thinking about ending their life. And they've just had the guidance they're looking for. Whereas actually the communicator was like, no. I was actually saying you should buy that red jumper. You look really good in it. So there's an element of professional mediums, we have to have a firewall to the information we might be getting, to understand the context of the guidance. And I sometimes run experiments with communicators. I've had people in their business, say, right, I've got 50 different shades of blue. What blue shall I use in my professional flyers? And I'm like, well, I don't know. But if you want the opinion of your mum, she can give you her opinion. Now, when a mum gives you an opinion, says, I like that blue, go for it. And you go off and print it and you go, Mum, why didn't it work? Why didn't I get the thousands of engagements or exposure that I wanted from that fly? And it's like, well, Mum's got nothing to do with marketing. Mum's got nothing to do with what you did with the flyers. She only gave you her opinion on the sort of the color blue. And I think the spirit world, very aware that they cannot directly influence this 3D world. All they can really do is advise, and therefore that advice, opinion, guidance, etc., has to be taken with a caveat. And as a medium, depending on our training, there's an element of like, we can't be seen to be telling people what to do. As a medium, we can't, under the consumer law, we can't help people. We can give you evidence of life after death. And for those of you watching different parts of the world, you know that in the UK, the consumer regulations have actually steered lots of mediums to say that they don't do mediumship. What they do is for entertainment purposes only, which means that you can't be, sued effectively under the Consumer Act. Now, I've never had to say that, because I hope that you find what I do entertaining, but this isn't for entertainment. I am going to give you evidence of life after life, and it's up to you to tell me whether or not I've done that. If I am charging for it and I'm unable to satisfactorily prove evidence of who the communicator is by giving you evidence of life after death, then you don't pay. It's as simple as that. And then there is no claim under the Consumer Act as well. And I stand by those sort of standards and values. But again, our levels of training, our levels of development mean that, understanding what that guidance could mean gets confused. So best thing to sort of do for that is to know that you are in charge. And when you take full responsibility for making, designing, and implementing your own decisions, sorry for coughing, by doing that and making that affirmation, I am the architect of my life, I make all the decisions, but I want your opinion, mum, nan, second cousin twice removed, on whether or not I should zig or zag, turn left or right, knowing that I will make a decision based on the opinion you give me. You can then look for that direction, that inspiration. Some people can do it with pendulums. Help me, mum, go left, go right, forwards, backwards, left, right, table tipping, cards within my card deck, either yes and a no card. So it's about choosing the right question, finding that inspiration, and therefore looking for it. So Terry says, I understand that. That makes sense. The medium's interpretation may not be correct either, which could make the influence decisions or mistakes. Yes, absolutely, Terry. But you certainly. So you get to the T-junction, right? I generally don't know. I don't know whether or not I need to go left or not going to right, but I know that I'm going to make the decision, and I'm going to stand by that decision. So, mum, in your opinion, from where you can see, for example, which way shall I go? Influence my left hand to go left, or right to go right? And you might find that they give you that sort of that element. I'm just going to mute for a second, folks. House of Plague in London, chicken pox, chest infections, and everything else in temperatures. And I'm worried that the heating is now drying me out and giving me a cough. So sorry about that, folks. But yeah, you can act as that radar. People have used coat hangers and not coat hangers, I forgot what they're called now, 2 metal rods to find water and stuff like that. You can find lots of different ways, including pendulums, holding across table, human pendulums. I've seen that with was it Polly Harnett, and Richard James has run some of those sort of live things. So you can look for that sort of guidance, and it's easier often when you take sort of responsibility for making and implementing your own decisions. Other people, like the cards, won't get out of bed until they've drawn a card to know what to do. And the fact is that no one is making them do it other than themselves. We have personal responsibility. We make our own decisions. Now, if you're asking the cards and you're asking the universe to help you make that decision, it goes back to that decision model we were talking about earlier on. Right, what can I see, hear, feel? What have I been told? What is my experience telling me? What is my intuition telling me? What is my instinct telling me? Right, now I've got all of those options. What is the limitations? What is the scope? What can I do? now I'm going to make a decision based on my values as a human being in this sort of experience. So, Terry, I think that the truth is there is guidance out there. You've got your principal guide, you've got communicators, and if you're asking sort of medium specific questions, then you could do that. And I think that, continue to experiment even through your own mediumship with others. So when I work with private clients in one-to-ones, I say I have explored the art of the possible, and I've said about questions. So as a bit of an experiment now, Terry, and you do not have to. In fact, I'm going to encourage you not to. Don't post the question, but Terry, right now, I want you to think about a question that you want guidance on. Okay, make it a closed question. Make it a closed question with one or two definite answers, a yes, a no, or a maybe. And as you think about those questions, I want you to affirm to the fact that you are in charge of your life, you have personal responsibility, and you love and live. You love yourself and you live by the decisions. As you think about that question, I'm going to be asked my guides to work with your guides and to take me to a card, right? And the card that I've just drawn for you is the card of liberation. Okay, and look at you there, Terry. There you are on the horse. Perhaps your lovely partner taking you on the bridge out and away from it all, and you've had to jump over the snake that could have bit you in the ankle. It could have bit the horse. You could have all fallen off into the water, but you've unlocked the door, you're out of the tower, and you're off and underway. And there's this real sense of freedom, of liberty, and of the fact that and obviously I know bits about your private life. I'm not going to mention that, but there's this element of doing this together is freedom, and there's an opportunity to continue to explore the art of the possible. So we want to encourage you to do that, knowing that this feeling of liberation, of liberty, is really quite empowering, recognizing that you can't go off on the horse and never come back. Home is where the castle is made, and there is that element there. But yeah, you should absolutely go for it. And when the opportunity comes, don't worry about the snake, jump on the horse. You've got someone else there guiding with you. Go off and do this together. So Terry, I hope that answers your question. That is the guidance. You've been encouraged to go for it, to enjoy that feeling, and that no one should deprive you of your liberty, hold you back, detain you. There's been an element of you being detained, held back, and restricted. So there's an example there about how you can sort of try and direct that guidance and how you can interpret it. Thank you very much, Terry, for asking that tricky but good question. Right, folks. Time to keep listening. We've got some wonderful adverts telling about all the amazing products, services, and shows on SPTV. And then we'll be right back with a few more questions and a few more readings. Thank you.
Introducing the SPTV app, your digital spiritual guide for an enlightening journey like no other. Immerse yourself in a world of audio and visual content crafted to inspire, educate, and entertain. Seek guidance with our card of the day, choosing up to 6 cards for personal insights. Enhance your daily life with our wellness section, featuring nutritious recipes, affirmations, and balanced living tips. Explore our spiritualism section for a deep understanding of the religion, its principles, and spiritual answers. Unravel the secrets of the clairs and broaden your spiritual horizon. Easily find local readers, therapists, centers, or churches with our comprehensive directory. Stay connected with live broadcasts, check our schedule, and get to know our insightful presenters. Delve into the meanings of angel numbers, crystals, and a comprehensive list of divination meanings. All of this and more, available for free on the SPTV app. Download now at sptv.uk/app and start your journey with your digital spiritual guide.
Hello, folks, and welcome back from the adverts. We'll be taking some more questions from people watching the show. Now, one of the people watching the show will be a familiar name to those of you that have tuned in before. It's Sophie, my cousin, and I want to just take a moment to send Sophie some healing. She was involved in a car accident today, and by the sound of it, her car's a write-off, and she's very lucky to have come off relatively unscathed. So I want us to all just direct a bit of love and light and spiritual healing to sort of Sophie's way. I know that she was unable to then go to work today, but she has tuned in and is watching the show, which is really good. Sophie asked some questions about development. And she was asking whether or not it's continued to develop. She's looking at a physical move in her life, and how she can sort of continue to develop. And we had a question earlier on about attunement with spirit, but I think there was a really good question, sort of Sophie, about sort of continuing to do that. And it's all about personal appetite. And it's about separating sort of time to things. And I was with my son Ethan today, and he was having a piano lesson from a friend that had provided these lessons for him. And he had the opportunity to do this before Christmas, but has hardly done any practice. And I just sort of said to him, if you spent 5-10 minutes every day just practicing that song, and he's got a little app on his iPad where he can sort of do that, then you would just get better and better at this. You might never be a concert pianist, but the fact is, if you dedicate that time single day, and I said that there are 7 days between now and your next lesson, how often are you going to do it? So I'm going to do it every day, Dad. So I'll report back in 2 weeks whether or not he's kept it up. But it goes back exactly to the same question, Sophie. So dedicating some time to reading, investing in you, and doing something in that space is an opportunity to develop. It's an opportunity to invest in you. And the card I've drew for you, Sophie, is the home card. Okay, so I know that we were speaking earlier on. You've mentioned, and I've made it online, that there is this move. But as I talk about home, I want to talk about home being where you hang your hat, and how important it is to know that you can move your hat anywhere and call it a home. And home is about what you make of it. It's about the love and investment that you put into it. And there's a real beautiful sort of warmth of energy about traveling with you, and you taking that unconditional love as a foundation blanket wherever you go. I'm also very aware of an animal in the spirit world that's quite close to you, Sophie. There is this little small animal, I think it's a cat, that is curling up in front of a fire, and you being this energy of the fire. So home is where you make it, and continue to bring that. But look for all the detail. Look for all the detail that make it a home, regardless of your space and the shape and the size. You've got the opportunity to do that. So thank you for that. Right, I've got a question here from Gemma, and I think there was one up before, Richard, that I just missed as well. So I'll go back to that in a minute. Okay, so Gemma O'Reilly says, as a medium, how can you focus on a message from one spirit without letting others interrupt you move on from one to another? Thanks, Gemma. Great question. I don't know how many of you have watched medium Ivan Lee. I was talking about him earlier on. He's a good mate of mine, godfather to my son, vice president of our church at Wimbledon. When I work live with Ivan has the ability to have about 15 different communicators all on the go at the same point, and he can remember the names of the people of the church, the names of the communicators, and I get so confused. Sat out there sort of straight, even though I'm trying to tune into the same sort of energy by way of sort of collective consciousness. So I'm a really simple creature, Gemma and folks, and I have to do one communicator at a time. And sometimes when I'm at the church and I work with Ivan, the communicators realize that they can sort of get away and do this with Ivan, and they sort of try and do it with me. And my guide team are what kind of prevent it from happening. So I imagine this sept of a waiting room. Bob Brunton works with Bear as my sort of principal mediumship guide, and they order everyone up. They go, right, grab a seat. Chills, okay, so you claim to know this person. You're going to get ready, write it down, 3 or 4 bits of information that says how you know that person in the audience and how Ash is going to find them. Right, you sit down, you'll be first. Next person will be you. And there's an element of doing that. And I can see it, can visualize this waiting room. So I allow my guides to do that. Now, every now and then, the guides come. The guy's like, this bloke ain't taking no for an answer. And, he was number 6, but he's saying he's number 1 because, his missus is about to jump on a bus and she's going to leave early. And actually, that sort of plain English interpretation and that relationship I have with my guides makes it easier for me. I know that the likelihood is it probably doesn't quite work like that in the spirit world, but there's a nice visual thing for me to sort of see there in terms of coming on. I think the other thing is that, and I'm going to quote my nan-in-law, Mary, who was Irish and Catholic, and some of the questions we had about spiritualism, about not disturbing the dead. And I go back to that point of saying, it doesn't matter. I am not a DJ. I can't take requests. If someone comes and says, Ash, I really want to speak to this person, I can't disturb them. They don't want to be disturbed. If they're not with you as the communicator, then I've got absolutely zero chance in communicating with them. You as the communicator are a bit like the lighthouse, and with affirmation and positivity, of dedicating perhaps little elements of service to them, you can perhaps draw them a bit, thinking about them and memory, that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's all about discipline, Gemma. It's all about working with your guides, developing relationships, and then again, experiment. Like I say, I run the experiments where I get to ask questions, and certain guides come through, and I've said to people, are there any questions you might like to ask? And I might say, well, thank you very much, you've just given me evidence of Auntie Flo, lovely jubbly, but what about my dad Bill? Is he up with her? So that's like a direct question, and Auntie Flo might go, oh, he's up here but he's not communicating, or hang on, I'll go and get him. Boom, suddenly dad Bill's here. Now, as a medium, I'm highly suspicious of that type of communication, because as I've just said earlier on, never feed a medium. And what has the person just done? They've just told you that the dad called Bill is in the spirit world, and therefore there's this element of you thinking, right, I've got them here. So I make that communicator work doubly hard when that happens, and I'm trying to focus on it and go, right, if you really are the dad Bill, I want you to now give me 4 or 5 bits of extra evidence which proves who you are to the communicator. The other suspicious part of me has always been that with information, how do you know that the human being is not trying to pull your wool over your eyes? They don't even have a dad in the spirit world, and he wasn't called Bill. And all of a sudden, oh yeah, I did, Dad. That would be a trap to fall into. I think that most people aren't like that. They're not going to try and trip you up. But the fact is, if you stick to kind of like your discipline, you stick to your lane of saying, don't feed me the information, let the communicator come forward and give you the information. It's down to them to verify it. So yeah, verification, discipline, and practice, and keep working with your guide team. And depending how they're communicating with you, sometimes when I'm at the church, I've had to turn around and I just say, please be quiet. I can't hear you. I'm trying to hear you. And I have this element of people coming up to me on the church platform. When I do these shows, where I am sort of sat in my office now, it's almost as if like the boardroom is in front of me, and I can see them all sat at a table, and I can see Ralph Steadman there, and they put their hands up, and I go to answer a question, and Bear will be like, say this, say this, say this, and so I go, oh, Bear is wrong, he doesn't know what he's talking about, and it's quite comical, and sometimes it makes me laugh because it's almost like I'm looking beyond sort of where the camera is. But again, it's plain English, and it's all about my own mind's eye. So create an arena for you, Gemma, which makes sense to you. Work with your guides, get in that discipline, and then continue to work with it and find what keeps working, and just keep tuning to that. So yeah, lovely question. Really liked that one. And the card I draw for you is Sage. Now, Sage is often about snuffing something out, isn't it? Something bad, something toxic. Get out the Sage stick. Let's get rid of that, or get rid of them. In this case, this is an old, wise man. He's got a white beard. He's got his robes on, and he's in these sort of halls of learning. Okay, so although we talk about Sage as taking something out, what I want to talk about, a bit like we were talking about my son and the piano, is creating time and space for you, Gemma, to do the things that are really important. There's an element of you being involved in the halls of learning, and I think about this as ancient halls of learning in the spirit realms. And Gemma, I believe that in a sleep state, you've been having the opportunity to go off and do some learning and some development and some investment into you. It's really important. I want to say that this Sage card is a representation of the infinite wisdom and experience of a new guide within your guide team, who you will continue to get to know. So keep asking the questions, keep having the appetite for learning and development, and your journey will continue. Thank you very much, Gemma. Lovely question. I'll take the next one. You said, Richard, the question I missed, I'd already sort of answered by answering the other one, yeah? Okay. Oh yeah, so Susan Riley, I think you had a similar question there. Do you have any advice on helping to become a medium? I've been in practice for 2 years. And you might do. So I'm going to name, and to a certain extent, shame, but I'm not shaming. I'm going to name my sister who I was with today, lovely Rachel. Rachel and I sat in circle at the same time. She was a little bit younger than me, and she used to call herself the psychic dud, because for years she felt that she couldn't give, readings in the same way that I would. But because we're different, everyone is unique, Susan, and we all find in circles we have a role to play. Now, sometimes in circles end up becoming more directed to one people. Now, if a development circle is being run, it's a closed circle, that should be equality of opportunity. Everyone's got the same investment to learn the principles. As they become more intermediate and advanced, you might find that certain people will go off with different strengths. Other circles become a sort of circle almost for the development of one person, and everyone else that's sort of sitting with them continue to sort of develop that person and provide energy, provide power and batteries for the sort of circle. But just keep doing what you're doing and see what else you're working. My sister used to work a lot of color. She's now a qualified spiritual healer and crystal healer. She's very powerful at what she's doing. Things that I can't do. And firstly, I don't have the patience. Lovely Leslie Moulton is watching the show. Our principal tutor taught me to be a spiritual counsellor as part of my journey to be a minister. I don't think that my life would allow me the space to have dedicated the sort of learning and development my sister did. 2 years. My wife did that as well. 2 years as spiritual healer. Even more investment from people like Leslie and Danielle that run those incredible training courses. So don't give up. You've got 2 years experience. Keep doing what you're doing. And you don't ever have to get up on platform and give a reading to a stranger. But working with that energy, working with that, Susan, just keep doing what you're doing. It sounds absolutely fantastic. Okay. Recharging my laptop. Jill says, how long have you been doing readings? So in terms of development, I'm 41 now, and I started sitting in circle when I was 18. You could argue I started doing readings when I was 18. Rewind a few years within the family, I was seeing, hearing, feeling, and being inspired by spirit from a very young age. I was playing with toys as a toddler, and passing on sort of messages in that way. In terms of sitting down and taking donations to the church, sort of, if you like, paying clients or serving churches, probably a little bit later. I think I served my first church when I was about 18 as a fledgling under the leadership of my circle leader then, Jill Hay. Since went on and did stuff with Christine Woodham and Mary sort of Dixie. And then the first time I ever worked on my own, there was a guy that's been on this show, Paul Cecil, works down in Portsmouth in the South Coast. And he sort of said to me, he said, I'm going to throw you straight out of your comfort zone, Ash. We know you can operate out of Wimbledon and Hatbridge Church. Come down and work in an industrial estate in Portsmouth, where I've got my sort of psychic and spiritual centre, where people come and pay to be there, and they want messages. And I call it my psychic crowbar, because Paul Cecil had that faith and trust in me and used that spiritual crowbar to get me out of my comfort zone to sort of come and do it. So yeah, that's sort of my roughly journey, last sort of 24 years, Jill. But I would say that every time I deliver a message, my dad would remind me, you're only as good as the last message you deliver. So you've got to continue to invest in yourself. And the more practice you can do, the better you can become, the more attuned you can become. And every day I take a daily advancement, a spiritual step. So great question, Jill. Question I've got for you, the card I've drawn for you is the wheel. Okay, so here's the wheel card, and look at that powerful wheel. Now we know this water wheel is powering another cog behind it, which connects with another cog. And I want to talk about all the interfaces, and that you are very much an important cog in this wheel machine. There's an element of something that you're all working together at the moment. There's a collective team effort, Jill, and the only things getting done are the things that are being counted, and it feels frustrating. It feels that there is some untapped expertise. It doesn't feel like everyone is getting to be truly authentic and getting to do all of the things that they want to do. And I can see that element of frustration, because this wheel is far more powerful than it is being used to do. It's not just turning around, it's powering lots of things, and it doesn't feel like all of the interfaces are properly worked together at their full capacity and their full value. I want you to encourage to do that. I want you to recognize that the water outside is flowing, it is fast, the water is rising. Within that, we also have the opportunity for opportunity. I've got these beautiful fish that are coming to join by the wheel, and they're picked up by the stream and the current that is there. So keep on keeping on, recognize the important part you play as that cog in the wheel machine, driving energy force, and there are greater opportunities to do even more together. Thank you very much, Jill. Lovely question. Just going to take the last couple of questions now, folks. Native Dreamcatcher, where do you think heaven is situated? Good question, and nice to finish with. We start life in spirit. I think heaven is exactly where we are now. So, you know, you think about planet Earth and where we are on planet Earth. I think heaven is within planet Earth, but it's in a different dimension. So we're all sort of in the same place. I think that the afterlife, the life after the life that we have in this 3D human experience is therefore all around us. Heaven, higher vibration, higher level of energy. There are lower dimensions and lower sort of elements and elementals sort of beneath us, but it is exactly where we are now. It's not a physical place that we go to, and the portals are therefore sort of portals between the dimensions, and it's all existence in the same place. Now, I believe that the spirit world, if you like, exists in exactly the same capacity the universe does. It's compartmentalized based on our knowledge, understanding of where we are now. And there are mediums that will tell you about talking to life on other planets, both alive in the sense that we would say alive, and also in terms of ascended and collective knowledge. But I think that we're limited as human beings to a certain understanding and knowledge in this current life at this sort of time, and that heaven is just around us. It's exactly where we are now, but it's in a different dimension, and it's a level of frequency of energy which is in a slightly different way. So I'm using wireless internet, Wi-Fi, to connect this stream today. I can't see the Wi-Fi. My phone can see it. My laptop can see it. It can recognize that the energy is there. And it's just like heaven. So heaven is there, and as a medium, we use our mind's eye to tap into it like the device. We become that physical medium between the third dimension, the fourth dimension, and that in meditative states we can allow our personality to either go back to that place we call home in heaven, or in the spirit world too. So Native Dreamcatcher, fantastic question to finish. I'll draw a card for you as well, and draw the card to answer your question. Folks, it's been wonderful to engage with you this evening and back on the show. The puzzle is the card I've just drawn there. And you are at a decision point. The doorkeeper has a key for you, and this key actually opens up both doors. I want to say that both doors almost identical. They are, one is hinged on the left-hand side with a left-hand locking mechanism. Right hand side hinged, and the other door is the invert in that. And I want to talk about the yin yang. I want to talk about the importance and power of that. The hand is up with the key on the right hand side. And as I approach that, being a right-handed person, my instinct is to use my right hand to pick up the key to the right door. But where do I go next? The nearest lock would be my native thing about going over to the right hand side. So I want to talk about the fact that you have the opportunities to explore both versions of yourself, both in this 3D experience and in the fourth dimension. Your follow-up question is, why is it I pass for a vow to see spirit? I think that actually this card links in with that, and I want to talk about the fact that that sort of veil, if we go back to things like All Hallows Eve and Halloween, when they talk about the veil between this world and the next being that much closer, I think it's about your understanding, interpretation. It. When I speak about the waiting room, you see the veil. It's all about our levels of attunement and how we used our own intelligence and experience to access that. So you going through the vow to see spirit, absolutely fantastic. The same way I go through the waiting room, and I want to say that you've got that opportunity to do it. It works quite well. Your doorkeeper has given you the key to go through that vow to see spirit, but there is another way too, and you can explore this path. It's less beaten track, the path of creativity, the path to the left hand side. You have the access to that. You have the access portal, you have the access key, and you can continue to do that. So passing through a vow to see spirit, absolutely possible. You are able to attune in different ways as well. So thank you very much, Dreamcatcher, for your question, and thank you, lovely folks of Facebook and YouTube. It has been wonderful to communicate and engage with you on this way today. I'm Ashley Robinson. I've been your host. You can find me across all of the social media platforms. And if you haven't already, why don't you go and find me and give my little page a like on TikTok and Instagram, even Snapchat and things like that now, at Ash Robinson Medium. That's at Ash Robinson Medium. If you find me across all of the social media channels, if in doubt, head over to SPTV UK. I'm on the Spiritual Psychics TV directory there. You've got links. My spiritual events, fantastic opportunity for us to share spiritual events, both online and offline. And there are lots of different profiles within that. For my church at Wimbledon, Hatbridge Spiritualist Church, we sell tickets on my spiritual events, which is directly linked to SPTV UK as well. Hopefully you have signed up to and subscribed to YouTube and the SPTV UK fan pages. If you're on Facebook, head over to the fan page group, wonderful group run by our admins. Opportunities to find out more about becoming a VIP, very important patron of SPTV UK, absolutely dedicated and committed to keeping this channel and this content 100% free, as we give you the opportunity for free spiritualist and psychic readings. Folks, I loved you being part of Being Spiritual tonight. I've been your host, Ashley Robinson. Good night and God bless. Thank you.